Hey, so I do a lot of work with what I call goals, and I have a particular model of goals that I use that we developed for the goal crafting intensive workshops that we run a few times a year, particularly around New Year's. This is also the model of goals that I use in the context of the goal setting and goal progress tracking app that I made called Accomplice. And a lot of people don't like goals because they have a particular concept of goal that says it has to be very, um, you know, rigidly defined and involve, specific metrics or things like that. But we've got a much more general concept of a goal, which, as far as I know, maps pretty well onto what the brain actually does when it's motivating you towards doing anything. So I just want to kind of lay out that model and the different elements of it, and then talk a bit about what happens if you have something that's like a goal but is missing one or more of those elements. And so, yeah, this is that video. It's adapted from a Twitter thread that I made a while ago, which I'll also link in the comments if you prefer to read things rather than hear me say them. So our definition of a goal is a recognizable desired state in the future that causes you to act differently in the present so as to realize it. And if you take out each of those components, you end up with some different elements. So if there's no recognizable state in the future, you just have some kind of trajectory. There's some thing that you're doing in some direction, but there's no place that you're aiming for. If the desired state in the future, or if the state in the future is not desired, then you've got yourself a should, something that you think you should do, but it's not. You don't actually have intrinsic motivation towards it. If the state is not in the future, if you're trying to change the present, you've got a regret. If you're not acting differently, then you just have a dream. And if the actions are just for show, they're not actually moving you towards that goal, then this is what we call signaling. So this is just one way to think about a goal, but it's a way that I found really useful. And it leaves out a lot of very commonly understood things that you might think you need in a goal, like a due date or a numeric metric, or even a state of finality. The recognizable desired state could be an ongoing state. So let's talk about these five sort of failure modes if you're missing the key pieces of a goal. So first off, if you don't have a recognizable state, then you just have a trajectory. Now, trajectories, less so than the other failure modes, are not actually bad. It's fine if you just want to explore whether that's a new city or a new industry. Following your appetite can be really lovely. But if we consider something like, I want to have a successful business, if you haven't clarified whether your success is going to be measured in money or in impact or in the autonomy that it creates for you or something else, then you don't really know if you're moving towards your goal, because successful is too vague. And so it'll be hard to recognize if you're going off track from what you really care about. The money might be going up, but you might be getting more stressed. And if what you're intending to aim for with having a successful business was to be free to do whatever you want, and not have to sort of, be stressing out about your work days, then you're actually going the wrong direction, even though the money's going up. And and even if you are moving, there's still something you're necessarily moving towards. So you might as well go ahead and make that clear. Even if that's very local, I just want to explore this thing and then see where I go from there. So thing number two, if you're missing the sense of desire, then what you have is a should. And this is very classic. A lot of the stuff that most people have on their to-do lists is not something they feel motivated towards. It's more like, I don't want to not have done this, because if I didn't do this, then I'd fail my classes, or I'd be fired, or I'd pay fees, or something like that. There'd be some sort of consequence I want to avoid by doing this thing. Even with something like doing my taxes, though, it's still possible to have an orientation that's like, well, given that I know that I eventually will do my taxes, how can I orient towards wanting the spaciousness that I know that I'll feel when they're done? So it doesn't have to be something that you want for sort of deeply meaningful intrinsic reasons, you can still orient to why you do in fact want to do the thing. And one way to get in touch with that is to try to accept the idea that you might not do the thing. Like, okay, maybe I'm just not ever going to do my homework. What would that mean? Well, I guess I would fail my classes. Well, then I would drop out of university. Okay. Well, I could do that. That is an option. Now you might be like, oh, like, that has various consequences, and often you'll go, well, no, I don't want to drop out of university because I want, to be able to get a job or to move or whatever other things that means to you. But then you're in touch with the motivation again by having allowed yourself to release the sense that you should. You then get more in touch with why you in fact want to for your own reasons. Having said that, though, sometimes if you reflect on it, you might conclude, oh, this isn't what I want. This is what my parents wanted for me or something. And so you might realize, I don't have to do this, and I'm actually not going to do this. And so that could be as small as, sending an email, or as large as an entire career change where you realize, wait, actually, when I get in touch with my own reasons, this isn't what I want on that. So the third thing that can be missing is the state being in the future. If the state you're aiming for is not in the future, then you do not have a goal, you have a regret. Look, on the one hand, obviously, the future is the only time you can achieve a goal. But people's thinking often involves a lot of stressing about the present already being the way that it is, rather than accepting the present and saying, where to from here? One common example of that is fitness goals. Setting a goal of losing weight, for instance, often causes someone to pay more attention to their body, which makes sense. But then this can activate a feeling of shame and a sense of, oh, I should already be, thinner. Or if they're trying to, put on muscle, like, oh, I should already be stronger, which can make it a bit hard to stay in touch with the future and the sense of the whole thing being a learning process and an ongoing unfolding rather than something you should try to get to instantly. So yeah, as far as, something in the future goes, one thing that can be helpful is to, just even try to bite off little pieces of like, where can I get that I can't get tomorrow, but I do think even on a small level, even if it's not all that I want, even if it's not even very ambitious, it is a thing I can move to in the future. And if you can tap something like that and then get a win on that level, then you start to see, oh, this is a process of movement. This is not like, goals are not for beating myself up about, therefore clarifying what in the future I want to move towards. There's a lot more that can be said about regret. At some point I might make a video about that too. For now, I'll link a blog post below that I've written about that. Item number 4 is taking action. So we defined a goal as something that causes you to take action. This is a way to highlight that a lot of people have quote unquote goals that are sort of floating around, not actually motivating them to do anything. And feeling bad about not doing it doesn't count as doing something about it. It does not actually move you towards the goal. I had this a bit before I actually successfully started my business in 2013. Back in 2012, I started thinking, yeah, I want to like have a business so that when I graduate, I don't have to get a job. But I basically did nothing about that for a year. It was sort of there, but I didn't decide like, yes, this is the thing I'm going to focus on right now. And so that was kind of a dream in this taxonomy, because it wasn't actually causing me to take action. I had a dream of having passive income, but I didn't have an actual project. And often dreams are bottlenecked on a decision. So if we take examples like, oh, I want to learn a new language, or I want to learn a musical instrument or something, it might be that you actually haven't decided which language or instrument and how to get started and when to practice. And in the absence of making those decisions, it's sort of like, well, you can't actually take any next steps. I mean, you can take next steps on making that decision, but if you're sort of treating it as if you should somehow be able to start moving already, then that's not going to work very well if you need to move down a path and the fork is right in front of you. Another thing to note is that another reason that you might not be taking action on what you think are your goals is that you might be conflicted about them. You might have fears, whether those are fears of failure or fears of success. what really makes something in that case be a goal rather than a dream is that you are orienting to, well, I want this. And also for some reason I feel stuck. I feel conflicted. I've got some sort of resistance. And you're trying to take the best action that you can think of towards resolving whatever that conflict is. And that might involve something very surprising. You might discover, oh, part of me really actually thinks it would be bad if I became a successful musician, or that it would be, my family would feel alienated from me actually if I went and got this career. And you have to like really grapple with that. Like there might be something really big there that you haven't noticed about your motivations not being fully aligned towards this, and you can't know in advance what that's going to be. So the fifth and final thing is that you have some supposed goal. You want the thing. You're taking a bunch of actions, and the state's it's a recognizable state in the future. But the actions that you're taking aren't actually really achieving the goal. Now, sometimes this is just because your strategy is bad. But if you notice that there's some sort of discrepancy between the actions you really know would make a difference and the actions that you're doing, then there's some sign that rather than being oriented towards moving the needle, you're actually oriented towards being the type of person who has this kind of goal. So maybe somebody wants to be an author more than they want to actually write and publish and so on. So they buy notebooks, they spend times in cafes with a blank page open, and they talk a lot about writing. Now, these are all actions, but they're not like the future they're moving them towards is different from the sort of stated future. The book is not going to get published. Much better would be to focus on, okay, I want to write this book. I want this book to be on, people's bookshelves and in bookstores and so forth. And then how do I move towards that? And then you can sort of more properly correct the feedback loop there. I don't focus a lot on signaling as an issue because I find it's usually related to some of the other failure modes. If you don't have a clear where to go, then it makes sense that your actions aren't going anywhere. Or if you've got a should, then you're motivated to behave as though you're trying to do this thing, because otherwise people will judge you. Likewise, with regret, it might be that what's going on is you're trying to show that you care about some mistake that you made. You're trying to put it right somehow, when actually emotionally you'd rather just sort of let go of it, and you don't feel like you're actually getting any useful future out of supposedly acting towards this. You're just avoiding people being upset with you, or avoiding some sense of yourself being upset with you maybe. But it's worth actually, if that's what you're trying to do, that's fine, but it's worth being clear on that rather than thinking you're doing it for some other reason. So those are the 5 components of a goal. I'm going to repeat out the structure to sort of put it back all together. A goal is a recognizable desired state in the future that causes you to act differently in the present so as to realize it. And if you'd like to explore working on goals, you can do that with the app that I made, Accomplice, or you can come to the goal crafting intensives, where for 5 hours we can help you get more clarity on what your goals are. And I'll put links to both of those below and maybe over here. So yeah, thanks for watching, and follow me on Twitter for more thoughts on this, or on YouTube. I'm going to be turning more threads of mine into videos, I think, because this is a very easy way to make a video, kind of basically improvising from a script and kind of adding some anecdotes as I go. So yeah,